Hi, Rishen. I am super excited to host you on another episode of peercheque Shorts. Thank you so much for taking the time out for having this conversation with me.
Of course, Shivam. I've been looking forward to this.
I'm particularly very excited about the topic that we have at hand today, considering the fact that I've spent a huge part of my early career days focusing on US GTM. And secondly, we've come across so many early stage founders who end up struggling with getting their first 10 customers in the US and then scaling from there. But before we actually take a deeper dive into it, it'll be great if you could quickly introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Topline as well.
Absolutely. So my name is Rishen. I'm one of the co-founders here at Topline. At Topline, we're a B2B software business, and we help sales teams find expansion and conversion and cross-sell pipeline from their self-serve accounts. We're a young company. We've been around for about 2 years. And today we're powering go-to-market motions for several product-led businesses like Cloudflare, Vercel, OpenPhone, and the likes. But that's kind of a quick intro of what we're doing here at Topline. Before starting up, I used to work for a venture capital firm. I was on the investment team at Sequoia for about 3 years. And before that, I spent what now feels like a lifetime building marketing automation and product analytics software at CleverTap. But that's a quick intro of me for you.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. I'm particularly looking forward to it, considering that you've seen both the sides of the table from an investment landscape and then operating and taking to top line where it is right now. I'll quickly dive into my very first question, which is more to understand what's the difference between selling into India and selling into the US. So it'll be great if you could maybe talk a little bit about what are the core ideological and mindset differences between decision makers in both the countries.
Yeah. I'll just preface, this answer and everything else we're going to talk about by saying that this is my experience. I don't know if it's the sacrosanct truth or not. And also, we're still figuring this out ourselves. We're still very, very early. We're working with about 30 companies. We've had some amount of success in the US, but I think it is still day one, like a long way to go, however cheesy that sounds, right? But to your specific question, right? I think the biggest difference that I've come across over the last 2 years of taking CleverTap to market and the many years I spent at CleverTap before that is in India and Southeast Asia, we in many ways are the land of generalists. And especially in early stage companies, you've got one or two people that have their hands in many pies and they're doing very many things. And they end up becoming decision makers for multiple classes or categories of software. In the US, on the other hand, it's almost as if you're dealing with the land of specialists. You don't have any generalists. So you've got people that specialize in the problem statement that they're solving. So the biggest difference in selling in the US as compared to selling in India is in India, you can, perhaps have a conversation with anyone in a company and you have odds of making a sale to that company. But in the US, unless you've spoken to the right person in the company, you're as good as, kind of knocking on a grave and there's nothing that's going to be yielded from that.
You got to be very focused on the ICP that you're targeting, right? Once you have a good definition of who you're targeting, your sales motion becomes a lot simpler. So, what are your thoughts on
Exactly.
building champions within organizations, right? Should early stage founders focus not only on like targeting the ICP, but also covering the entire lay of the land and focusing on the people who influence a deal closure compared to just the decision maker?
Yeah, I think this is a lesson we learned the hard way here at Topline, at least. Um, as product founders, we would show what we've built to customers. We would see their eyes light up and we would get very excited and we would assume like it's job kind of done, right? And we'd walk away. But honestly, I think, giving a successful demo and getting the other person to, parrot back the problem statement that you're solving is like a 3 on 10 job done. The 7 on 10 is still left. And the 7 on 10 is actually identifying your champion, nurturing them, getting their buy-in, getting them on your side, and helping them navigate their organization to buy your software. So that's really the sales process. And I think that is something that we got wrong for a long period of time. And we paid the price of that. And we're trying to change that now. So identifying your champion, nurturing them, getting them on your side, and then helping them navigate their organization to buy your product is really the job of sales. It's not to give a demo. It's not to, kind of communicate the value of your product. That's just a 3 on 10 job done.
Yeah, and I think it's totally driven from a relationship building standpoint as well, right? Like it shouldn't just be that, okay, this is the amount of revenue savings that our product can get you, but making sure that there's an internal push within not only the decision maker, but everyone else who would end up using the product, ensuring the fact that the deal closes pretty soon. This leads me to my next question. we've met so many early stage founders in the 0 to 1 journey who end up focusing both on mid market and enterprise, and considering how, and you would know this better, how the difference between and the overall sales cycle in both those segments, the compliances and the integration, uh, things early stage founders end up getting a little lost. So according to you, should they focus on one of these segments? If so, how should they go about it?
So I think without a doubt, you should be hyper focused on one segment, right? I know common wisdom will say that your TAM seems small, but I
Yeah.
personally think of TAM almost in like concentric circles, right? So for instance, for us at top line, our innermost circle is B2B software companies that have a freemium or a self-serve business model and a sales team that have a prioritization challenge. Now, while the universe of that companies might seem small, there is a broader universe that's outside of it that necessarily doesn't have a freemium business model as a free trial business model. There is a universe outside of it that's perhaps even a gated product, but is still operating at scale. But we've still started at the innermost, concentric circle, so to speak. Once we've moved away from sales being an art for that circle to being a science, we've then kind of earned the right to move to the next concentric circle and there on out. So I firmly believe that you need to start at a very narrow definition of your ICP. You need to try and work as hard as you can to make sure that your pool of prospects is homogeneous. They look the same, they say the same things, they have the same problem statement, because then you have the same sales playbook that will work for them. You have the same marketing playbook that will work with them. You've built the same sales collateral that's going to work for them. So that's what's kind of increasing your odds of success. On day one, if you have a heterogeneous, prospect pool that you're trying to sell into, you're actually making life harder for yourself. And life is hard enough as is.
Yeah, no, and I think you touched upon a very interesting topic about creating playbooks that can be replicated, because ultimately, if you're able to succeed into one company, you're able to create that success within other companies as well, right? But to do that, you need to get that first company and close the entire loop. So maybe if you could talk about how exactly can early stage founders go about creating the top of the funnel, making sure that they're closing the first 10 accounts and then moving ahead from there.
Yeah, so I think the answer to that question, like most things in life, is it depends. But if I'm to get specific, right, like let's say if you're a B2B software business and your goal is to get 10 customers, which is not a very large number, unless of course you're an enterprise software play that's
Mhm.
selling software worth like hundreds of thousands of dollars, in which case 10 is also a large number. I think the process is fairly straightforward, right? As founders, we've started our companies because we saw a problem statement or we experienced a problem statement ourselves and we have a solution for it. So we in our minds have a hypothesis that this problem that we're solving is one that is faced by X types of businesses. So it's as simple as identifying a certain number of businesses that fit that profile, identifying a certain number of contacts that then work at those businesses that would feel your pain and the problem statement that you're solving, and then kind of reaching out to them through a channel that works for you. That channel could be email, that channel could be introductions, that channel could be events, that channel could be LinkedIn. It depends. Different channels work for different people. But reaching out to them, having conversations, and trying to push them through the sales funnel. So it's honestly like I wish I had like a golden bullet for you or a silver bullet for you,
Mhm.
but it's basically that. It's just groundwork day once you've identified the list of folks you want to go after if you want to get to 10 customers. The challenge is how do you go beyond that?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, right? Firstly, identifying the sort of customers that you want to run, that you want to chase, and then starting from the very ground, from a simple LinkedIn outreach to maybe running a marketing campaign to maybe relying on your investors to make those warm introductions. But what are your thoughts on the partnership route? Like, do you think companies in the 0 to 1 journey should rely on partners and build from there, or should they just heads down, focus on direct sales?
So my answer to this question is no. Whether it's the right answer or not, I think time will tell.
Mhm.
But I personally believe that for you to be able to have a successful partnership, either with an SI or a reseller or any other product company, whatever that type of flavor of partnership might be, your sales needs to have moved away from being an art to being a science. Because only when you have a replicable playbook can you offer it to a partner, and then that partner can execute against that playbook, and then they're incentivized to run it. You need to be able to convince them that they will be successful in selling your software, and therefore they will see some kind of economic benefit out of it. But the 0 to 1 journey, if I don't see why you would have that playbook in place. So you have to run it yourself, in my opinion.
Have to run it. And I think that makes sense. Or there should be a lot more direct sales driven than relying on someone else to sell your software, even considering the fact that you might still be developing the software and the first 10 customers might just be design partners or people that you're working with to build the product out. So do do you think that founders should focus on selling themselves, or should they end up hiring like a sales specialist to do that for them?
I think you have to sell yourself. You don't have a choice because as someone that's building that company and has faced the problem they're trying to solve intimately, you are best equipped to have a conversation with the prospect. And in the early days, at least when you're having a conversation with the prospect, you're selling them the promise of a solution. You're not selling them a solution already. Because it's hard for me as a relatively larger company to walk up to a relatively younger company from whom I'm buying software, and I might be their first or their second or third customer, to believe that the software works. I have to believe that they will be able to build a software that will solve my problem. And as a founder in that position, you can actually go and have a conversation with them, and you can portray that you're an expert in the problem that you're facing. And if you can convince someone you're an expert in the problem that they're facing, they have no choice but to believe that you're potentially the expert in then solving that problem as well. So that's something only you as your founder can do. I don't see how you'd be able to replicate that process with the salesperson.
Got it. And I think that makes sense, right? Because the founders are actually building the product out. They have a depth of understanding of why this problem statement exists, and it's easier for them to convince because they're truly passionate about it compared to like hiring someone else who's just doing that to achieve their KPIs or get their variable or their bonus out there. So apart from like, as an early stage founder, you might have your list of like 10 companies, 20 companies prepared. You must be ready with the value proposition that you bring to the table. Is there anything else that they can do to reduce the overall sales cycle? Because for both mid-market, at least in my experience, we've seen that a mid-market sales cycle like around 2 to 3 months, and an enterprise might even go up to 8 to 12 months in general. So is there anything else that they can do to reduce this?
I think in the early days, you don't really know what your sales cycle is. And the sales cycle that you have for your first 10, 15 customers in no way, shape, or form is representative of what your sales cycle will be at scale. So, at least in the early days, my recommendation is to remember that it's a numbers game, right? Unfortunately, the human brain loves anecdote but doesn't understand statistics. But we need to realize that more often than not, we're going to have like a, you know, 5 to 10% meeting book rate, and one in every X meetings we have will become a prospect, and one in every X prospects will become a paying customer. So if you want 10 customers, you better be sure that you've got a list of a few hundred, or if maybe even several hundred that you can go after. You need to remember that it's a numbers game. So I don't know how you'll reduce the sales cycle, but what you can do is you can parallelize conversations, and then after you've put in enough work, you'll have enough of them closing in parallel.
Got it. I think this is a very relevant insight, right? Focusing more on getting those 10 customers or getting those initial closes to start building those playbooks, and like getting the building phase done, then figuring out how to reduce that or become much more efficient over there. This brings me to my last question. Is there any advice that you might have for like early stage founders who are just starting to sell in the US?
Um, yeah, I think we've learned the hard way. There is some amount of science behind the sales process. So don't try and hustle it through first principles. I think this is a science that people have figured out a long time ago. Build a database of companies you want to go after, find contacts in those companies, and then your only responsibility is to get meetings with those people and then show up on those meetings and kind of work them through the sales process. You just need to make sure you do enough of them before you give up or before you wave the white flag and you say it's not working. Because I think it's easier said that you have a 10% conversion rate, but in reality, what that means is 10 out of 100 conversations you're going to have will win, which means 90 conversations will go poorly. So don't get dejected when you've had those 90 bad conversations. It's possible that the 10 good ones are around the corner. So just remember that there is science and there's math. Like, that would be my only piece of advice. I know it sounds very tactical, but that was perhaps the hardest lesson that we've learned over the last 2 years.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful thought to end the conversation with. Thank you so much for taking the time out for having this chat with me.